gentleman's time has expired. Chair recognizes the gentleman from Louisiana, Mr. Scalise.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. As we debate what I agree is a very important piece of legislation, in my opinion, and many others would have very detrimental effects on our economy if it was implemented the way it's been drafted. We've been trying to get a quantifiable grasp on the cost of this bill, how much it would actually cost American families, how many jobs would be created and lost. And number one, on the science side, we've had very divergent views. We've had dozens of experts come over the last few days and testify, giving very different opinions on the science. On the economics of it, we have not had the same kind of divergence. In fact, most economists and experts that have testified on the cost acknowledge, in fact, I'll refer to President Obama's own budget that was just passed 2 weeks ago. If you go to page 119 of the President's budget, he's anticipating generating $646 billion in new tax revenue from this bill. So clearly the President expects this bill to generate $646 billion in new taxes that even his own budget director has said would be passed on to consumers. Senator Warner, we had seen numbers on the Lieberman-Warner bill. The President's budget director today, he was the head of CBO last year when he testified on your bill. He said it would have cost consumers about $1,300 a year more in their average utility bills, in addition to everything else they buy that's related to electricity, or gasoline, food, anything else. Can you, and then Senator Gore, talk to the numbers that this Congressional Budget Office and now the President's Budget Director gave to your bill and how that would relate to this bill in terms of the cost to American families of implementing a cap-and-trade energy tax?
I would say that the work done by the Budget Office on the bill that I was privileged to be working with is a good foundation, and that you can, I think many of the assumptions would carry over to this legislation. But Congressman, we've got to make a start. If we're looking for absolute certainty, we're never going to get a bill. We have to start the learning curve, start the process, and then build on it. And that's why I strongly urge that you incorporate language to give to the Chief Executive Officer of this country the authority to move in when he believes that corrections have to be.
And of course, we don't see that in this, and I'm sorry to interrupt, but I know my time's limited. Vice President Gore.
Congressman, you began by denying that there is a consensus on the science. There is a consensus on the science.
Well, you must have been listening to our testimony that we've had for the last few days with dozens of experts that have come in who have given completely different views.
Well,
I would encourage you to go back and look at the testimony this committee's heard.
There are people who still believe that the moon landing was staged on a movie lot in Arizona.
And neither of us is one of those, and I know you like giving those cute anecdotes. This is not a cutesy issue. We're talking about that can export millions of jobs out of our economy, out of our country, and testimony's been given just to those numbers. And so we're talking about a serious consequence that there would be on this country and the carbon leakage that would occur where the carbon would be emitted, but it would be emitted in China and India, and the jobs would go to China and India. And that's been testified before this committee in the last few days as well. Testify about the actual cost. Do you want to talk about the cost?
Man-made global warming pollution causes global warming. That's not a cutesy issue. It's not an open issue.
It's your opinion. Obviously, you've stated it many times.
It's the opinion of the global scientific community, and more importantly,
and not in unanimity. There are others on the other side.
More importantly, Congressman, that opinion is the opinion of the scientific studies conducted by the largest corporate carbon polluters 14 years ago, who have lied to you and who have lied to the American people for 14 years.
And you talk about carbon, and I'm running out of time. We talk about carbon polluters. You talk about them. It's my understanding that back in 1997, when you were vice president, Enron's CEO, Ken Lay, was involved in discussions with you at the White House about helping develop this type of policy, this trading scheme. And is that accurate? Is it inaccurate? It's been reported.
I don't know, but I met with Ken Lay, as lots of people did, before anybody knew that he was a
right.
crook.
And clearly, you can see why so many of us are concerned about this type of cap-and-trade energy tax that would be literally turning over this country's energy
I didn't know him well enough
economy.
to call him Kenny Boy.
Well, but you knew him well enough to help devise this trading scheme, and obviously we know what Enron and these big guys on Wall Street like Goldman Sachs, and I know you've got interest with Goldman Sachs.
No.
These people, well, that's been reported. Is that not accurate?
No, I wish I did.
With executives from you're partnered in companies with executives from Goldman Sachs. Well, if you're not. Either way, Enron clearly had an interest in doing this when they were around. We saw what they did. And when you see the types of people involved in wanting to set up this kind of scheme, you can see why so many of us are concerned about turning our energy economy over to a scheme that was devised by companies like Enron and some of these Wall Street firms that wrecked our financial economy.
I don't really know if you want me to respond to that. I guess what you're trying to say, you're trying to...
I mean, clearly there will be big winners and big losers.
You're trying to say there's some kind of guilt by association? Is that
not association. I'm saying that there are going to be big winners and big losers in this bill, and that's been discussed by everybody talking. Big winners and big losers. But some of the big winners are some of the very financial experts that help destroy our financial marketplace. And I think that should be noted, that companies like Enron helped come up with this trading scheme that would be invoked in cap-and-trade.
Enron didn't create this proposal in any way, shape, or form.
Well, the details are not in this bill.
That's a false accusation.
The details are not in this bill, and I would suggest that they are.
Mr. Chairman, I do need a few minutes. I really have had a marvelous opportunity to work with many, many interested parties across this country on this subject, including corporate America and the business community. And I hope that those following this hearing don't get the views that the wrongdoing by what I hope is a very small minority should not be brushed across the whole spectrum. Indeed, if we're going to solve this problem, we have got to rely on the corporate America, the financial America, the technical America to work our way out within the constraints and directions of the legislation. But I find that there's far in the majority, most people are trying to responsibly come up with solutions to this problem.
And then there's an alternative. The American Energy Act, which was filed last year, which I still think is a better alternative to cap-and-trade, is still out there.
Gentleman's time has expired, and for the record,
I yield back.
For the record, the proposal that we're considering has had the CEO of General Electric, of Alcoa, of Rio Tinto, of corporations across the country.